happening tonight in Vancouver.
We really didn't comprehend what we were going to face that window in late June, right?
Metro Vancouver is about to get another dangerous stretch of hot weather for the third time this summer. How paramedics are preparing to do overtime amid concerns for long response times.
Violence against women and marginalized genders is not a byproduct of a strong and thriving nightlife, right? If our public realm is not safe after dark, or a thriving nighttime economy comes at the expense of some people, we really need to reflect on interrupting that.
There's no excuse for this kind of behavior. What one group has to say after Vancouver police reported an increase in sexual assaults, in particular on the Granville Strip.
We are working actively with the provinces and territories on a secure pan-Canadian proof of vaccination for international travel.
Ministers say vaccine passports could be here by early fall.
This is City News Everywhere.
Paramedics and dispatchers have been stepping up amazingly to take as many extra shifts as they can. It's still not filling every ambulance. We got a lot of work still to do.
First responders are concerned about delays as another dangerous heat wave is set to hit Metro Vancouver. It's the third time this summer. Paramedics are getting ready to do overtime, trying to fight the fatal outcomes that we saw during the heat dome in June.
We really didn't comprehend what we were going to face that window in late June, right?
Troy Clifford with the Ambulance Paramedics of BC says emergency services are more prepared this time. He says they're ready to do overtime, even if it means going against what the union rules say. BC's health minister is encouraging people to call 911 if they need assistance.
The BC Ambulance Service remains ready to serve you. Paramedics and dispatchers are on deck to help quickly to people who call for it.
But while they're on deck, as always, dispatchers and paramedics still have the same concerns.
They're apprehensive going into this weekend, just like we always are, because nothing's slowed down from increased call volume. We're still seeing out of service levels that we're doing our best to really shore up.
The BC Coroner's Service says that 815 deaths were reported from June 25th to July 1st, where temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius in parts of the province. In the wake of the deaths, thousands of people demanded action at the top of BC's Emergency Health Service Management, eventually leading to Interim Chief Ambulance Officer Leanne Heppel joining the team in July. Clifford feels more confident about the work he's doing with the new management structure.
Yeah, how confident? I'm very confident. As long as we follow through with the commitments and the structure, and they make the changes within the organization that we desperately need to really long-term sustain this, then we're on the right track.
Heat warnings remain in effect for Metro Vancouver and much of the province, with the peak of the heat wave expected on Thursday. In Vancouver, Kier Junos, City News.
For the month of July, we have noticed a significant increase in reported sexual assaults throughout Vancouver. We have seen a 129 increase in stranger sexual assaults reported to us in July alone when compared to July of 2019.
Disturbing stats from Vancouver police. In July alone, there were 16 stranger sexual assaults in the city compared to 10 in July of 2020 and 7 in July of 2019. And the Granville Entertainment District is a big problem area.
In particular, there has been a 167 increase in sexual assaults related to the Granville Entertainment District when compared to a 3-year average for the month of July. Since July 1st of this year, there have been 8 incidences related to the Granville Entertainment District. Those 8 incidents range from groping, unwanted touching to forced sexual intercourse.
The VPD has since relaunched its Hands Off campaign to warn the public in hopes victims will come forward. Constable Tanya Vizentine says there are multiple suspects in the different cases.
Our officers are very alive to the sensitivity of these files and will do anything to uphold the integrity of the survivor during the investigation.
As nightlife picks up again in downtown Vancouver, one group says there is no excuse for perpetrators to exercise power over women and marginalized individuals. Good Night Out Vancouver is a not-for-profit group that aims to break up harassment when it sees it. You'll often see them walking the strip here on Friday and Saturday nights.
What is particularly troubling when I reflect on it is the inference here that women and marginalized genders are safer staying at home when it comes to sexual assaults perpetuated by strangers.
Forrester says their group was on hiatus for a bit due to the pandemic.
We officially restarted July 23rd, so we're going into our 3rd week of being back. And from the data that the team collects, it's been very busy on the whole. There are a lot of people out in the public realm.
So as we hear about these stats, what should we be thinking about?
So if we think about sexualized violence as motivated by power and how power has really been destabilized during the pandemic, I would really encourage people to really reflect on this in their own life, their own consent skills, how they're sharing power, what they're doing around safer nights out.
And no one should have their dignity and safety sacrificed for an enjoyable night out on the town.
If our public realm is not safe after dark, or a thriving nighttime economy comes at the expense of some people, we really need to reflect on interrupting that.
In Vancouver, Rhea Renouf, City News.
It was over an hour at that point. He had been hiding and waiting for me to come out. A woman says she was followed off a SkyTrain in New Westminster and had to hide behind a cosmetics counter in a local drugstore to escape. She's now thanking the staff for helping her stay safe and questioning why police couldn't do more.
BC is recording 536 new COVID-19 cases tonight. We haven't seen a number this high in almost 3 months. There has also been one additional death in the last day. Once again, the interior makes up more than half of these new infections and accounts for the majority of BC's active cases. We're seeing more people admitted to hospital. It's up to 72 patients now, with 29 in the ICU. As for vaccinations, 71% of eligible people are fully immunized.
I'm pleased to inform Canadians that we are working actively with the provinces and territories on a secure pan-Canadian proof of vaccination for international travel.
Soon, Canadians will need more than just this to travel internationally. The federal government couldn't offer specifics or a firm date, but say they're targeting early fall to roll out a vaccine passport program.
Having an internationally recognized proof of vaccination credential, we think is essential for Canadians who want to safely resume international travel when it's appropriate to do so.
Despite months of work, the federal government offered few details beyond what was previously announced in June, that a program is being worked on and that there's buy-in from provinces and territories who hold the vaccination records.
We're obviously expecting it to be a digital credential, but there will obviously be other forms available to Canadians who aren't able to use a digital credential.
Ministers say the program is only being considered for international travel. The focus is on creating a vaccination record that can be easily accepted by other countries. But if provinces wanted to use the federal vaccine passport instead of making their own, that's not for the federal government to decide.
There may be other applications which may have ready use for the reopening of the domestic economy that falls very much under the provincial purview.
In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
This has gone on too long.
Canada and its allies condemning big time the 11-year sentence handed down by a Chinese court for one of the Canadian Michaels. So where do things go from here?
When I hang up the phone, I look up and the guy is running towards the door because he, just as I thought, waited in the underground hiding for me to come out for over an hour.
A woman says she was followed by a man last week when she got off the train here at New Westminster SkyTrain station. She ended up seeking refuge at this nearby Shoppers Drug Mart and says the all-female staff at the time hid and protected her for over an hour.
I just know he's waiting out there for me. I know it. I know he is.
Kimberly Boyce is still shaken after the incident that happened late at night on August 1st. She exited a SkyTrain at New Westminster Station and was followed by a man as she started to make her way home. She says he tried to ask her for directions and she tried to help him for a while, but she eventually told him she needed to go.
I was like, bye, and I turned to walk down the stairs. He follows me down the stairs, and I pick up my pace and he picks up his pace. And then I'm like, oh, crap. So I turn right, and he turns right. So I turn right again, and he turns right. I'm like, great, this guy's following me. Great.
It was around 11 p.m. on a Sunday, and most of the nearby stores were closed. But Boyce saw some staff still working in the Shoppers Drug Mart built into the station.
And as I run in, with this guy right on my ass, there's a security guard right at the front door, and she was wonderful. I believe her name was Navdeep. And as I ran past, I just went, this guy behind me is following me. and she stopped him right away.
Boyce says staff hid her in the cosmetics area of the store for about an hour. During that time, the man made several attempts to enter the store. Boyce says her past experiences with police made her hesitant to call at first, but she eventually did.
And then when the cops showed up, like, I think 1 or 2 squad cars like drove around the block looking for him for like 15 minutes, and then they were like, we don't see him.
Boyce believes the man left just before police arrived. Angela Marie McDougall with Battered Women's Support Services says too often she sees cases like this where there just isn't enough evidence for police to take firm action.
I think it's important for survivors to know that there's a lot of limitations to what can actually happen with respect to the police. And what is really helpful is if there's a larger, more community-based intervention where we have businesses and bystanders, community members that are that we can rely on.
After the incident, officers escorted Boyce home. The New Westminster Police Department tells City News they are currently working to identify a suspect and are asking anyone who witnessed the incident to contact them. Police are also praising the all-female staff at Shoppers Drug Mart who kept Boyce safe. But Kimberly Boyce says she's disappointed more isn't being done and that too often the onus is on the victim to stay safe.
And it's kind of frustrating because that shouldn't be our job. And women are taught from a very young age, all these tips that we always have to remember, And if we didn't do one of those tips correctly, then we get victim blamed.
In New Westminster, Ashley Burr, City News.
A 5-year-old boy is going to be okay after he was attacked by a coyote in Stanley Park. The Conservation Service says this happened at about 9:30 last night around Prospect Point. The boy was running ahead of his parents when the animal lunged out and bit his leg. The coyote was chased away. Just last month, 4 aggressive coyotes were put down after several attacks. If you're going to be at the park right now, be very careful. As of Monday, you can once again go to the Vancouver Aquarium. The popular attraction has been closed for nearly a year and a year and a half because of the pandemic. Earlier this year, it was sold to an American consortium that owns other tourist attractions in the U.S., like Dollywood. It says visitors will get access to new things like a 4D theater and a new marine mammal rescue exhibit. There's more evidence the real estate market is cooling in the province. The BC Real Estate Association says sales dropped by more than 7% last month compared to a year earlier. But the average price jumped more than 17% to more than $890,000. The association has a warning, though, for those looking at getting into the market. It says, quote, while sales remain robust, listings activity continues to be a concern as inventories trend near record lows, which means prices are going to stay high.
Canada condemns in the strongest possible terms Mr. Spavor's unjust conviction after more than 2.5 years of arbitrary detention.
A court in China convicting Canadian Michael Spavor of espionage Wednesday, sentencing him to 11 years in prison. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau calling the decision absolutely unacceptable and unjust.
This has gone on too long.
Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau slamming the Chinese trial, saying it did not satisfy the minimum standards required by international law. Foreign diplomats from 25 countries standing in solidarity for Spavor at the Canadian Embassy in Beijing. Support also coming from the U.S. Secretary of State, who tweeted in part, "People are not bargaining chips."
Our collective presence and voice sends a strong signal to China and the Chinese government in particular that all the eyes of the world are watching.
Spavor and another Canadian, Michael Kovrig, were detained by China in 2018. It's a move widely considered as retaliation for the arrest just days earlier of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei exec Meng Wanzhou at Vancouver International Airport on a U.S. warrant. Her extradition hearing now in its final stages. Beijing denying accusations it's using hostage diplomacy to secure Meng's return to China. But another sign of escalating tensions between Canada and China came Tuesday, when a Chinese court upheld a death sentence for Canadian Robert Schellenberg. Initially, he was sentenced to 15 years in jail for drug smuggling, but that changed a month after Mung's arrest. Canada is demanding clemency for Schellenberg and the immediate release of the two Michaels.
And we will continue to provide consular assistance to these three Canadians and do everything that we can to support them during this very difficult time.
Now, Garneau was tight-lipped Wednesday about what exactly the strategy is beyond ongoing talks to bring the Canadians home. Spavor's sentence also included deportation, but it's not clear when that could happen, during or after jail time. It's also not clear when Kovrig might be sentenced. Spavor's family is saying in a statement, while they disagree with the charges, and they say it's the next step in the process to bringing Michael home. Melissa Duggan, City News.
The defense chief, who was accused of sexual misconduct earlier this year, says he's ready to take his seat back at the Canadian Armed Forces. This comes as military investigators opted not to charge him following an investigation that went on for about 4 months. MacDonald stepped down in February as Chief of Defense Staff after a female member of the Armed Forces brought forward allegations of misconduct. Minister of National Defense Harjit Sajjan was asked about his reaction and the prospect of MacDonald returning.
My expectation is that Admiral MacDonald will remain on leave while we review this situation. The position of Chief of Defense Staff must always uphold the highest standard within the Canadian Armed Forces because of the responsibility that position and the weight that it holds.
A global crisis continues to grow tonight as massive wildfires continue to rage in several parts of the world, including right here in Canada. Here in BC, White Rock Lake fire continues to smolder. Light rain provided some help over the weekend, but the hot and dry conditions are back, making the challenge greater for firefighters. More than 260 wildfires are burning throughout British Columbia, forcing the evacuation of 6,200 properties. More than 65,000 square kilometers of land has been scorched so far. That's an 87% increase above the province's seasonal average over the past decade. A similar situation playing out across Greece tonight, where video from the country's armed forces is giving us a bird's eye view of some of the 500-plus wildfires burning across that country. That includes a series of dangerous blazes that are threatening ancient Olympia, the historic birthplace of the modern Olympic Games. The fires began last week in the midst of Greece's worst heat wave in 3 decades. At least 2 people have been killed. Meanwhile, in southern Italy, firefighters worked through the night trying to protect homes from being destroyed. The country has seen a 70% jump in wildfires in the past 2 months. Crews are also on the ground in Sicily's Mount Etna, prepping for possible forest fires. With temperatures soaring to 46 degrees, dry vegetation and brush are being cleared in order to create a buffer that would stop or slow the spread of the flames. And the situation remains grim tonight in the North African country of Algeria, where wildfires have killed at least 65 people. 28 of the victims were soldiers deployed to help fight the fires. The government there is accusing arsonists of starting dozens of blazes without providing specific details on the allegations. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11 o'clock. Thanks for watching and have a great night.